We'll get started while we wait for our attorney and administrator. Let the record reflect we have reconvened with all members present. Please rise for the pledge, and I will ask you to remain standing after the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. This weekend, we lost a dedicated borough employee who retired just over a year ago, May 1st of 2015, after starting with the borough in 1977. So after 38 years of service, Sal DiBiase, who retired as water foreman, certainly knew the undergrounds of this borough better than anyone. So please, a moment of silence for Sal and his family. Thank you. With executive minutes, as we did last time, I'll take a motion and a second, and if there are any questions or corrections, we will then push that to the next meeting. So I have a motion for the executive minutes of April 11th, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Were there any corrections that need to be made? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? All right. Motion for the regular minutes of April 11th, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Objections? Thank you. Welcome all. The sun finally came out after a long stretch. We certainly needed the rain, but it would have been preferred over the whole month and not all in 1 week. Report from the library. The Madison Public Library is pleased to have newly paved and striped parking lot available to public and staff use. It did take an extra couple of days until the rain stopped to get the spots striped. This project was generously funded under the Borough Capital Funds. Many thanks to Bob Vogel, our borough engineer, David Maines, Superintendent of Public Works, and staff for the assistance for the project. The Public Works Department had to remove a large tree stump from the staff parking lot prior to the paving. Presumably the stump dated back from the building construction in the late 60s, and I guess was just sitting there. And despite the weather, they were fortunate to have many Rotarian volunteers showing up on May Day to do their annual cleaning of the planting beds and around the library. So thanks to all the Madison Rotarians who participated. The library's picture room reconstruction is progressing with ceiling work completed. Electrical and floor work are to follow. The library hopes to have the room available for use during the busy summer programming time. And speaking of summer, two important dates are Monday, June 20th, Summer Reading Club kickoff, and Saturday, July 30th, Touch a Truck, sponsored by the Friends of the Library. And in the meantime, exciting programs sponsored by the Children's Department include Meet Michelangelo, Therapy Miniature Horse on May 16th. That was May 16th for the Therapy Miniature Horse. That should be interesting. And Meet Seeing Eye Puppies on Tuesday, May 24th. And check the website for actual times. Online registration for those programs are required. And a few other things that's happened over the last couple of weeks. As you know, that we hosted the Historic Preservation and Streetscape Symposium on April 27th. I didn't say it ahead of time, but I would have been pleased if we got 30 concerned residents to show up and we had over 50 in the room to hear a panel of experts discuss what is being used in other towns successfully and what are some of the challenges. And then we had group breakouts, and they each reported back on recommendations for possible implementation in Madison. So we'll be handing that off to the planning board and next step, and there'll be more to come, and we'll be reporting back to the council on that. And I'm sure we'll hear more on May Day, but as I already mentioned, it was not one of the nicest May days. In fact, or most of us were talking about it, we can't remember the last time it actually rained. There were some not so nice days, but it was a nice steady rain. It made you look nice and messy. It was very clear who worked on May Day because we all got mulch sticking to us. But We did have still an army of volunteers out there. DPW, we want to thank them for their extra effort in making that happen, getting the mulch out there. I worked on the train station with the council members and other volunteers led by Richard Romano. And I just want to extra thanks to Danny DiBiase from DPW. He was hauling those bags of mulch up the steps, and I could barely take one, and he was taking 2 or more and probably 3 at a time and working so hard. So it really was an impressive day. Also celebrated, moved indoors, was Arbor Day in the rotunda down below. A little crowded, but for the music, the acoustics were great. The poems from Kings Road, the folk song from Tory J, and the orchestra from Central Avenue were very impressive, and of course the traditional maypole dance by St. Vincent's, a great event, and that marked our 31st straight year of being Tree City, USA, and that's thanks to the Shade Tree Management Board and the Friends of Shade Tree for making that happen. Right in front of me here is a memento from this morning on the groundbreaking at the Green Village Road School project, known as the Rose Hall, which will be the rental property, 100 rental units, and then Madison Place, which is a 35 condos. And as they discussed today, we hope that late spring, or early summer next year, we'll be already cutting the ribbon. This is going to be an incredible asset to Madison as housing close to Midtown Direct in our downtown. The comments, which I won't share the whole thing today, but I'll share the theme, which was I used the theme of Circle of Life, because I've heard some people lamenting that it was very sad to see an old school go down, and as I pointed out all too often, I'm class of 68 from Green Village Road School, so yes, it was my school that was taken away. But this was a school that, along with the Kings Road School, built in the post-World War II years, serving the baby boomers that were about to come through our school system. So those baby boomers that walked the hallways and were educated will now be the baby boomers that may be living in Madison for downsizing because it's not the option, but now it is an option for them to sell their home and stay in Madison. So hence the Circle of Life. And the employees for the month of May, and we have one employee right here in the room. For those of us that answer the phone for Madison businesses, we often get calls from Madisons across the country, and for the most part, it's easy just to say, I think you mean Wisconsin or Connecticut or New York. But for a call that came into our Madison Police Department last month, it was very important that that was not the answer, because this call was from a suicidal caller from Madison, Connecticut, somehow reached the Madison Police Department, a dispatch desk, and Acting Lieutenant John Misha, Patrolwoman Stephanie Carraro, and Senior Dispatcher John Rafter are receiving the Employee of the Month for their professionalism and dedication in assisting this caller and working with the Madison Police Department in Connecticut, and working as a team. A successful outcome was realized by their perseverance in keeping the caller on the phone for 2 hours until her location could be determined. The police in Connecticut then made contact with the caller and brought her for treatment. And John is here, and then let's give a round of applause for all three. And we have an anniversary, crossing guard Margaret Lasapio for 25 years on May 30th. And if you want to translate that into school days, that is 4,500 school days of standing out there crossing our students. So you see Margaret at her post, please congratulate her. And I'm going to come down below for a couple of proclamations. We've got 4 of them, so I got to bring my water. Bob Landry, you want to come up and represent our ambulance corps? I don't think I can see anyone else in the ambulance. So we have two proclamations. One, Emergency Medical Services for Children Day, May 18, 2016. Whereas the needs of children are different than the needs of adults in medical and traumatic emergencies. Whereas Emergency Medical Services, EMS, for children promotes high-level, age-appropriate emergency care given by EMS providers with pediatric emergency skills. And whereas EMS providers unceasingly prepare to respond to children who access the 911 system and return them to optimal level of health. And whereas EMS for Children collaborates with physicians, nurses, social workers, psychologists, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, school nurses, educators, administrators, child care providers, and others to identify the issues surrounding provision of optimal pediatric care. And whereas EMS for Children facilitates development of training programs, education guidelines for emergency care providers so that children get timely and appropriate care. And whereas it is proper and timely to bring this recognition to value and accomplishments of such dedicated men and women by designating Emergency Medical Services for Children Day. Now, therefore, I, Robert H. Conley, Mayor of Borough of Madison, on behalf of the governing body, hereby proclaim May 18, 2016 as Emergency Medical Services for Children Day and encourage residents to applaud and support the work of EMS personnel who provide emergency medical care to children as they continue to improve the quality of life for all children in our state. Number one. And then we have Emergency Medical Services Week, May 15th to 21st. Whereas Emergency Medical Services, EMS, is a vital public service, and whereas Madison Volunteer Ambulance Corps has provided years of service at no extra cost to residents through dedicated volunteers, and whereas emergency care personnel, including emergency medical dispatchers, first responders, first aiders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, nurses, and physicians, whether volunteer or paid, serve on the front lines of our healthcare and public health system, giving selflessly of themselves. And whereas each year more than 3 million New Jersey residents and visitors require emergency medical care for traumatic events, and traumatic injuries, burns, poisoning, spinal cord injuries, heart attacks, and other critical medical emergencies. And whereas New Jersey has a wide range of emergency medical providers, including local first aid and rescue squads, ambulance services, mobile intensive care units, air medical EMS response programs, special burn care, a poison information education service, designated trauma centers, medical dispatch services, other vital services that have potential to save lives and reduce disabilities of critically ill or injured. And whereas access to emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, whereas EMS personnel engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their skills, and whereas New Jersey is a leader in these types and qualify of emergency medical care available to patients and desires to continue to improve upon its emergency medical care system in order to assure all residents the highest standards of emergency medical care, and whereas it's appropriate to recognize the value and accomplishments of EMS providers by designating an Emergency Medical Services Week. Now, therefore, I, Robert H. Conley, the Mayor of Borough of Madison, on behalf of the governing body, hereby proclaim May 15th through May 21st as Emergency Medical Services Week in recognition of all those engaged in emergency medical services and encourage residents to observe the week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. So please thank the volunteers for all they do for Madison. Thank you. Chief Natchison, Acting Lieutenant Misha, please come forward. For those that were in downtown today around 10:30, saw a special moment as Police Unity Tour went through Madison on their way to Washington, D.C., and that's in honor of, in advance of National Police Week. So I want to read this proclamation, and it's very important, a reminder of our police that put their lives on the line every day. Whereas there are approximately 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Madison Police Department. And whereas since the first recorded death in 1791, almost 20,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and have been killed in the line of duty. And whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., and whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored through the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 28th Annual Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13, 2016. And whereas May 15th is designated as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and the United States flag shall be flown at half-staff. Now, therefore, I, Robert H. Conley, Mayor of Borough of Madison, on behalf of the governing body, hereby proclaim May 15th to 21st as Police Week in the Borough of Madison and publicly salute the service of all law enforcement officers in our community and the communities across the nation.
Mayor, I proudly accept this proclamation on behalf of my officers and those serving our communities across America, and especially those who have given the ultimate sacrifice for our well-being. Thank you.
Marlene Dolan. And we also have our Board of Health Chair, President Don. You want to come on up? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your service. National Nurses Week, May 6th through May 12th. And so you've already missed a couple of days, but I apologize. Whereas the health and well-being of people are the biggest priorities of our community, and whereas in the Borough of Madison, nurses are an integral part of our healthcare system, serving residents of all ages with skill, knowledge, caring, and commitment, whereas nurses have a unique perspective and a broad understanding of the concepts of good health. Whereas May 6th through 12th has been designated National Nurses Week to acknowledge and promote the contributions of nurses in our community. And whereas Borough of Madison Public Health Nurse Supervisor Marlene Dolan has been dedicated to the well-being of Madison residents since 1994, ably assisted by Elizabeth Bringard, Mary Beth Bodansky, Kelly Burrows, and nurse practitioner Kathy Ruiz. Now, therefore, I, Robert H. Conley, Mayor of the Borough of Madison, on behalf of the governing body, hereby recognize the week of May 6th to 12th as National Nurses Week and encourage citizens of Madison to acknowledge the many services provided by nurses and the tremendous contribution they make to the health of our residents and well-being of the community on every day. Thank you so much, Marlene. Would you like to say something?
I just want to accept this on behalf of all of Madison's nurses, school nurses, office, hospital, home care, however. They're a good crew. Thank you.
Reports from committees, utilities, Mr. Wolkowitz.
Thank you, Mayor. The water department, for a very small department, continues to be quite busy. They had 88 requests for locating and marking underground utilities for shade tree plantings. We don't get that tree acknowledgement for nothing, right? It's a lot of trees going up in a week. Well, 2 curb boxes were checked and water was turned on and off for inside plumbing repairs. We had 10 outside registers that needed repair or replacement. And Well E, which you've heard me talk about more than once, is getting much closer to going up and being back in service. The emergency generator is now online and working. There were meetings with contractors to coordinate new water main projects on West Street, Kinney Street, and Cottage Place. And there was also an investigation of a hydrant struck by a motor vehicle. And finally, some possible leaks on Greenwood Avenue and Elmer Street, and complaints of low water pressure were investigated and resolved. There was no report this week from the electric department. Thank you.
Thank you. Health, Adanello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ooh, it's loud today. The Madison Health Department held 2 food handlers courses on Monday, April 18th. There were a total of 25 participants representing 10 restaurants in the area. The goal of the course is to ultimately protect citizens from contracting and transmitting foodborne illnesses and to educate food service operators and consumers about safe food handling practices. Once a year, the public health nurses conduct immunization audits of all the daycare and public schools in Madison and contract communities per state law. The goal is to ensure proper vaccination and immunization among our youth. Should a child not be current on their vaccines, they are excluded from school unless they have a religious exemption or bona fide medical exemption. This year, Madison had a 3.8% exemption rate in the child care preschool setting for mandated vaccines and a 2% exemption rate for the public school students in kindergarten, 6th grade, or as a transfer student. Most exemptions submitted in Madison are religious requests. May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month. With 3.5 million cases and over 2 million people diagnosed annually, skin cancer is the most common form of cancer in the United States. Fortunately, skin cancer is also one of the most preventable forms of cancer, and May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month. Please remember to take the necessary precautions to avoid overexposure to the sun as the warmer months approach. These precautions include covering up with clothing and headwear, wearing the appropriate amount of sunscreen, and seeking shade whenever possible. In addition, the Madison Health Department will be hosting a free skin cancer screening event at the Madison Community Pool on July 10th from 2 until 5 p.m. For any questions, please contact the Madison Health Department. Springtime is also screening time. The Health Department is gearing up for their springtime screenings. They are as follows. There will be a women's cancer screening next Monday, the 16th, from 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Registration is now open through the Madison Health Department. And then there will be a men's cancer screening on Monday, June 6th from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. Registration will also be required with more information to come. Comprehensive metabolic profile fasting blood analysis will be available on Wednesday, June 8th at 8 a.m. from 8 a.m. till 10 a.m. And registration will also be required with more information to come. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Finance Borough Clerk, Mr. Landrigan.
No report, Mayor.
Public Safety, Ms. Vitale.
Thank you, Mayor. Report from the Madison Police Department. Officer Bart Glob was selected as Employee of the Month for April due to his Mothers Against Drunk Driving Award that he received 2 years in a row. Officer Glob has been instrumental in taking impaired drivers off our streets and making them much safer for our community. Madison Police have hired a full-time dispatcher, Evan Webb, who will fill a vacancy within the Communications Division. Evan Webb is also a volunteer with the Madison Fire Department and the Madison Volunteer Ambulance Corps, and they're very happy to have him on the Police Department team. Madison Police also hired Travis Daniel and Ryan Dunn, who will graduate the Morris County Police Academy on May 26, 2016. Both officers will fill vacancies within the patrol division and will start their department field training immediately thereafter. On April 27th, the Madison Police donated 2 truckloads of toys to Goria Children's Hospital in Morristown. These toys were left over from the 2015 Toys for Tots Toy Drive. We hope to make that an annual event. On May 5th, the police department received $16,387 from the Morris County Prosecutor's Office forfeiture program. This figure represents Madison's percentage of seized assets by our department in the year 2015. The police unity tour came through Madison this morning at 10:30. Madison Officer Sergeant Longo, Patrolman DiCaro, and Patrolman Macario, Law Enforcement United, all participated in the ride. This ride honors those who have given the ultimate sacrifice in the protection of our communities across America. Report from the Fire Department. During the month of April, the Fire Department responded to 107 calls for assistance. The calls are broken down as 13 general alarm, 19 still alarms,
23 investigations, and 52 medical calls. 2 department drills were held, one of which was a live burn training at the Morris County Fire Academy. 86 fire prevention inspections were conducted. 31 smoke detector CO inspections were made for resale or rental of 1 or 2 family homes. The fire department will be participating in the Madison's High School Day of Service later this month. There was a resignation from the volunteer fire division, and Madison and Florham Park firefighters raised a large flag this morning in front of the American Legion post on Ridgedale Avenue to honor the police officers pedaling to Washington, D.C. for the annual Police Unity Tour. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Community Affairs, Ms. Bailey.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. From the Downtown Development Commission, in spite of the rain on Saturday, May Day was a big success. The DDC would like to thank the approximately 900 volunteers who participated, the sponsors who supported the event, and the Madison Department of Public Works who worked throughout the day to make sure the event was a success. The Madison Farmers Market is right around the corner. It will be returning to Central Avenue between Main Street and Cook Avenue for the 2016 season on Thursday, June 2nd. The market hours will again be 2 to 7 p.m. Shoppers can look forward to weekly musical performances, an expanded list of participating vendors, and a frequent shopper card program. The Madison Chamber will also again feature their Look Good, Feel Good Madison program, which will showcase businesses in the fields of health, wellness, and beauty every week. Also, mark your calendars. The first Madison Storytellers Festival will be held on Saturday, June 11th. The event will be held on Green Village Road between Main Street and Kings Road and in various other downtown sites. The event will bring together Madison's unique arts and culture community for celebration, performance, readings, and interactive and arts education events, showcasing Madison's unique quality as a creative and cultural destination. And you can check out Madison Storytellers Festival page on Facebook for more information as it's released. And applications for Bottle Hill Day, scheduled Saturday, October 3rd, will be distributed by the end of this month. Time marches on. From the Madison Senior Center. The Friends of the Madison Senior Center held their annual spring luncheon on Wednesday, April 20th to honor the AARP/VITA tax volunteers and SHIP Medicare counselors. Catering was provided by Romanelli's and 42 people attended. The May newsletter includes information for seniors on the 2016 electric utility rebate and the homestead benefit tax credit. And Fran Boardman, who is an employee of the Borough, contributes to the new newsletter monthly health columns. Her latest focus is on delicious superfoods. St. Vincent's construction has required moving daily masses to St. Paul's behind the walls. And the Senior Center is working with the staff to provide van transportation for Madison seniors to attend the noon weekday service at the new location. And local resident Angie Bomer donated 3 boxes of crocheted granny squares, which the knitters and crocheters will turn into Afghans for distribution to the Carol G. Simon Cancer Center and the Goreb Children's Hospital in Morristown. And plans for the 2016 summer seminar program is complete. There will be 9 speakers. Doug Simon, Gordon Chang, Perry Lovell are among the presenters, as is Krista Jenkins, the executive director of Fairleigh Dickinson University's Public Mind, who will speak on polling in an unsettled political climate. That's certainly true. The seminars are funded by the Friends of the Madison Senior Center and the Friends of the Madison Public Library. Edna Irely Byrne, who is the director of the Senior Center, attended a conference on aging March 20th and 24th of this year. And in that report, she said the focus of the conference was age-friendly communities. And so she wanted to talk about how Madison ranks with regard to being an age-friendly community. And she said, first of all, many of the presenters emphasized that there are limited resources and reduced budgets, so we need to create public-private partnerships of all kinds The focus for many regions was housing. Madison anticipated this in the 1970s when affordable senior housing was launched. Currently, we have our Tri-Town 55-plus focus group, which also emphasized the need for housing for those seniors downsizing in search of smaller homes, while builders are replacing these homes with ever larger homes, leaving empty nesters to relocate elsewhere. Meanwhile, residents who want to age in place can anticipate home modifications such as wider doorways, ramps, improved lighting, and smart home technology. And as the mayor mentioned, KRE might be a perfect spot for downsizing for Madison residents and Madison baby boomers. Under transportation, while transportation for Madison seniors is doing well, there will always be requests for additional hours. Between 2010 and 2015, van ridership doubled from 2,275 a year to 4,502 a year. Van service ends at 2:15 in Madison, which prevents seniors from attending meetings and programs ending beyond mid-afternoon. So transportation is a really important service to look at, and perhaps we could do a shared van service with Chatham, so they're hoping to investigate that. And then Madison, there was one of the topics at the conference was age-friendly public spaces. And Madison has already accomplished much of this with safer sidewalks, more visible crosswalks, and corner curb cuts. The Mayor's Wellness Campaign initiated this effort, assisted by members of the Senior Center with a sidewalk survey. And we also have a merchant outreach program. And then lifelong learning was another topic, and Montclair was recognized at this conference as a very age-friendly community, and Madison is well-positioned, according to our senior director, for a lifelong learning option, given the proximity of Drew, Fairleigh Dickinson, and St. Elizabeth. And there were many discussions about reaching out to isolated seniors and the difficulty of contacting a hidden population. And we talk about that at the senior meetings every month. We talk about people we may not be reaching. And one conference program described using the local police, fire, first aid squads, and neighborhood watch groups to distribute useful community information. Cards containing contact information for transportation, Medicare counseling, social interaction, Meals on Wheels, and other local and county resources could be left by first responders, providing ways to access local assistance. So that's from the seniors. Moving on to the Chamber of Commerce. I'm sorry I'm taking a long time, but I cover a lot of committees. And this one I think is really important because every resident in Madison can vote for someone in the town, a business, an employee, who really does a great job in providing services. And the Madison Chamber of Commerce is proud to present the Extra Mile Award to be rewarded to Madison employees who provide outstanding customer service. You can pick up forms at different businesses throughout town, and you can fill out the form, the nominating form, through June 1st, 2016. And then the person will be honored at the June 6th Chamber of Commerce dinner. And businesses through Madison will be displaying the nominating forms. From the Recreation Department. Okay. The spring-summer field schedule continues. You didn't know your meeting was going to be this long. I'm sorry. Everybody responded to me this time. We have 22 different sports programs across 15 fields. We also will be having summer camp offerings. That will be posted on the recreation page of RoseNet shortly. The Dodge Field basketball courts will be resurfaced and repainted this month as soon as the weather permits. The total cost of the project was $22,000 and will be split evenly between the Borough and the Madison Basketball Association. Alfred's Sports Shop will be renting a Lucy D. field this summer to run a 2-week sports camp in July. Rental revenue is expected to exceed $30,000 this year. The Madison Girls Softball Program used its annual $3,000 grant to repair and upgrade backstops and dugouts at Madison Junior School. The borough contributed an additional $3,000 toward the total cost of the project, which was $11,500. The transition from the Green Village Road fields to the Madison Junior School fields has gone as anticipated and has not interfered with the softball schedule in any way. The Madison men's and women's softball leagues begin their schedules this month and next, and they will again play their games at Lucy D and the Madison Recreation Center for the women. The softball scoreboard at the Madison Recreation Complex 1 is complete. The rink field irrigation work and seating at Rosedale have been completed. There are field close signs there, and we would really appreciate it if everybody would respect those signs and not go on the field. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much for a very thorough report.
Hold on.
Public Works and Engineering, Mr. Rowe.
All right. First, the most important announcement of all, according to our borough administrator, next week, our borough will move back to its twice-a-week schedule for garbage pickup. The schedule will be in effect through September. Additionally, the Public Works Department continues planting trees throughout the boroughs. From the Sewer Department, they continue their work on cleaning out trouble spots. I'm going to skip the road report because Mr. Vogel will be up shortly to talk about that. Downtown paver material orders have been placed with Grinnell and Hanover for delivery within 6 weeks. The brick planter boxes at the intersection of Main and Waverly will be replaced this summer. And we've also asked the DPW to pull out the gum buster and start working on cleaning the pavers that we do have downtown. PSC&G has informed Madison it plans to replace gas mains and services on the following streets: Fairview, Hoyt, Westerly, Central, Lorraine, Buckingham, East, Greenwood, West End, and Broadway. We have in turn requested a 5-year projection so that Madison can work more closely with the utility on replacement and resurfacing work. PSC&G has committed to repaving Fairview and Buckingham Drive within the next 2 weeks. And finally, for parks, after an award of the construction contracts for the Danforth Road Sports Field sites, remediation project phase 2, the work will be starting in September, and quotes for irrigation improvements and overseeding of the existing fields will be assembled for work this fall. And Ms. Bailey covered the rest. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And one last thing I forgot to mention. On Friday night, I attended the Fire Department annual dinner dance and service recognition dinner. 2 people I want to recognize. I sat next to Kenny Cameron, who, as he was telling me the year he joined as a volunteer, I pointed out that was the year I was born. He served as a volunteer and a career fireman and still serves the department, so he was recognized for 60 years of service to the Madison Fire Department. And then Jay Hagerich was recognized for 50 years of service as a volunteer and career fireman. So if you see either one of them, please congratulate him and thank him for the service to our town. And now we're on to communications and petitions. Any communications?
There are none.
And no communications. And now we're on to the first of 2 invitations for discussion. This one is limited to items on the agenda under number 13, which is you can discuss the roadway milling and paving update or the appropriation of $500,000 from General Capital Improvement Fund for Prospect Street, or any of the resolutions under the consent agenda. Ordinances have hearings. You may comment when we have those hearings, or any other topics. You have to wait until our second chance. Anyone wishing to be heard? Seeing none, close this part of the meeting. And we move on to our agenda discussions. The first one, roadway milling and paving update. Mr. Vogel.
Good evening, everyone. Due to our foresight in getting the appropriations and budget work done in January and February of this year for the road program, it allowed us to get our contracts for Tilcon and some of the subcontracts in place in March and April, and start work at the last week of April. So thank you for getting that advance work done and allowing us to get our contracts in place. With a large contractor like Tilcon, it's always helpful to get them early and get them once during the course of the year. A lot of other towns have to chase them around if the year drags on and they're looking to get work done when milling and paving later in the year. And so it's really good to get them early, and we accomplished that again this year. So thank you again for your part in that. We were able to both mill and overlay the following roads: Court, Parkside, Hillcrest, Hillview, Highview, Union, Essex, Seven Oaks, Sinclair, the Madison Recreation Complex access road, and 2 library parking lots with the appropriations that we did for mill and overlay. So it was a very successful week over the past 2 weeks. despite some of the rain, which we had to work around on 2 occasions for paving last week. So thought there was a good synergy of the police department and our own staff, both DPW and our inspector, Frank Russo, and seemed to help get the projects expedited and without any real incident. And as the mayor mentioned, the striping on the parking lots for the library just got accomplished this morning. So all good things. Cifelli & Sons also has a general construction contract for 6 other roads. Those are Kinney, West, Cross, Cottage, Crescent, and Lewanika Terrace. There are water components on those roads, and Cifelli's subcontract Revax will start on West Street. I believe they milled it for the water line on Friday, and I believe they will start work replacing the water main tomorrow. And so that's good. Cifelli & Sons themselves will be doing curbing and drainage work on Lewanika Terrace. They were there today, and they are resolving some gas utility conflicts in order to get the storm sewer profile installed per plan. And we're getting past that, so it's all good news. The last item on the road projects would be Prospect Street. It is our final engineering appropriation request for the year. And Prospect Street is DOT funded, which is kind of the reason we had to hold off a little bit on the appropriation request. So the DOT came through with $172,500 in terms of state funding for that, pursuant to an application we made last fall. So the overall appropriation request for Prospect Street, based on the cost estimates that were done by Bauman, is $500,000. The net funding, therefore, with $172,500 credit from DOT, will be somewhere around $337,500. So that works with the capital budget pretty well. Any questions on any activities that are going on? I'm happy to.
Basically, you covered items 1 and 2 very well. So, Astrid?
I do have a question about Prospect Street because you have the specs here in the agenda recommendation.
Sure.
And I wanted to know what landscape restoration referred to and whether any street trees would be going down. To my knowledge, there are no trees involved in Prospect Street at all, Austri. So the landscape restoration is basically when they're doing new curbing in various locations like the bump outs, which are a traffic calming device, which we're going to install on Prospect Street. At least that's the plan at present. The landscape restoration would be the topsoil and seed and the subgrade that's required in those areas. So all trees are staying? Okay. Good.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I just want to thank Bob and his department. I think the one thing we learned last year was the early bird gets the worm when it comes to your pick of contractors and when you want to get the work done. So I want to thank them for getting us queued up very early for this year by working hard last year, and they've already started working on the 2017 project, so we can repeat that next year. Thank you, Bob.
Makes it a pleasure. Thank you.
Well said. And I understand that you have a 90-second PowerPoint presentation if you want to do it for the public, a very quick before.
Could be.
What's the presentation about?
Are you?
You're serious?
Yes. So we can.
With that, Jim Sanderson. Oh, terrific. Look at that.
Look at that.
Wow.
So we'll just do a quick little. As I said, I think it's 90 seconds. So do a quick little overview of what's going on.
Okay. Well, certainly on left to right, we have a number of streets that the milling is taking place. I believe Jim's staff was out there taking these pictures, if I'm not mistaken, or either Frank Risto as well. So as you can see, the pavement with the 2 inches milled is beginning to get replaced on the second frame, and the third frame, again, just truck carting away millings, and I'm trying to figure out which road it is, but I don't see any signs in the photos.
That's just a header there, yes.
All right. So, nice, on Court Place, clearly labeled. Milling on the left frame, the paving on the right frame, and the beautiful street sign, which could be replaced someday as well on the right frame. Essex Place is the second frame. Now, Essex is a T road off of Union, which was in the capital budget. It's a very short T road. It made perfect sense for us to do that. We got favorable pricing, and we had DPW involved in all the manhole and inlet repairs instead of contracting that out, which was an expensive option. So it gave us a little bit of money left to do a little bit of extra work here on Essex Place. We got that done in the capital budget as well. And again, on the right frame, just the asphalt beginning to be laid down side by side. 90 seconds, I'm hoping I'm on schedule. Hillcrest, not really nice pictures, but you can see top and right, you have the tack coat going down in between raindrops, but I don't see any rain coming down, so that's all a good thing. On the left-hand side, you see, lower left-hand side, you see the asphalt machine, which Tilcon maintains, throwing the asphalt pavement directly on top of this tack coat, which is the step number one after the milling's done. Madison Public Library, we did a number of improvements in terms of curbing at the library, gained them, I believe, 8 additional parking spaces in the effort, had very little really had to be done in terms of curbing, but we had Cefeli available on site again under a county co-op program, and they helped us out with the curbing improvements. Again, the straight line striping was there today, and was very careful about laying out the striping for us. And all in all, we were able to gain one parking space in the staff parking lot at the library, and 6 or 7 parking spaces in the general, the large lot where the public parks at the public library. Good to see that work being done. I know Nancy had some quotes early on from private independent contractors, and I believe we beat their price by a very significant amount using the county co-op resources. So, really saved a lot for the library and for the borough in that process. Madison Recreation Complex, you're all familiar with. We've been kind of holding off on that access road repaving for quite some time. Things you really don't want to see. I see a little rainfall accumulation on the right side of the road, so that was something that's really not favorable in terms of laying the pavement down, but I believe that only happened in 1 or 2 small areas on the complex while we were paving it, and so managed to get the paving done. Tim Watts, who is the facilities representative from Rockefeller Group, was very pleased to see that happen. He's been bugging me for a good 5 years for getting that access road repaved, so it was good to see it finally done. And should eliminate a number of complaints and calls from the Rockefeller's tenants. Parkside Avenue, another good example, tack coat. Very little disturbance of drains and curbing and grass, anything like that. So the mill and overlay program is quite simple to implement in comparison with the reconstruction work. So there's no really significant drainage work or curbing work done. You can see a lot of this work here is just leaves all the existing curbing and grass and everything else in place. So all good work. Seven Oaks Circle, oriented road up on the Lauren Park boundary. That was the first road of the set that actually got done, and you can see here the same process over and over again. So I think Tilcon's quite good at it, and they managed to knock it out very quickly, and that makes everyone pretty happy. Terrace, an additional road that was added. Fairly emerging conditions. It's right off of Noe Avenue. And due to a lot of home construction that's happened on Noe, a lot of contractor parking, and a lot of circulation, cut-through circulation that happens on Sinclair to get over to a number of the other roads in that complex. Sinclair got a lot of wear, and we just made a judgment call that if we had the cash, we could throw that to Tilcon and get them within the budget amounts to resurface that road at the same time. But again, a very small section of road, relatively speaking. Union Avenue, adjoining to Essex, same sort of treatment. Frank had worked with DPW to actually put these manhole frames on to keep vehicles safe from manhole covers between the milling and the repaving and surfacing of the roads. And actually, Frank had also recommended some catch basin risers, which in certain cases where you have a large dip in the catch basin, as you're approaching that from the paving, it makes sense to put a 2-inch riser on so it kind of levels out the paving surface. Frank caught about 10 of those over the overall program that we didn't catch early on with DPW going out. And so those adjustments really made a big difference in the final paving, so we were happy about that as well. Big thank you to all of our residents for being understanding for the past 2 weeks.
There you go.
Ta-da.
Excellent PowerPoint. I think to echo Pat's comments, especially after we've just seen that PowerPoint, I think we've just accomplished what many towns would call a multi-year road plan, and it's May 9th, and that's very impressive.
We're only half done, Mayor.
Yep. Excellent work. All right, moving on to ordinances for hearing. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Ordinance scheduled for hearing was introduced by title and passed on the first reading at a regular meeting of the Mayor and Council held on April 25th, 2016. All were posted and filed according to law, and copies were made available to the general public requesting same.
All right, we'll be approaching these a little bit differently. We're going to have grouped hearings, pretty much either by the source of the capital funds or the purpose or the combination thereof. We'll open the hearing, we'll close the hearing, we'll then have council discussion, and then we'll vote on each of the ordinances in that group by individually. So the first group are related to electric capital, ordinance 17 through 21, and ordinance 36. So 17, $210,000 for historic lamps on Kings Road, $125,000 for submersible underground transformers, $120,000 for new security fence. Ordinance 20 is $30,000 for replacement of existing outdoor stairway at Kings Road substation. Ordinance 21, $20,000 for purchase installation of security cameras for Kings Road and James Park substations. And
That's it. That's 36.
And 36, many pages back, is $35,000 for automated meters and handheld reading devices. I open the hearing for those ordinances. Anyone wishing to heard, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing and open it for council discussion on any of those ordinances. Rob?
On ordinance 17-2016, what's the benefit of a historic lamppost?
That matches the ones that we have in downtown already, so and the ones we also have across the street along the train station, so it's just a unified look.
So it'll be the entire length of Kings Road, or just
No, just this.
just to the Y?
Just a stretch. If the old 1950s, probably Cobra, are the ones that are getting replaced.
I see.
Yeah, so it's not the full length. It's just more the commercial and Hartley Dodge, or the commuter lot area. Any other council discussion? All right, I call up ordinance 17 and ask the clerk to read it by title.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $210,000 from the Electric Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of new historic lampposts on Kings Road.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Wait, don't we have to move
Wait,
this?
We need to move in a second. Yeah, so that was a test. Just, Austria, you caught me, and I was listening this time. Can I have a...
All right.
I can't move too fast, can I?
Yeah, that's okay. Mayor, I move ordinance 17-2016.
And I second that motion.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello.
No.
Mr. Landrigan.
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale.
Yes.
Ms. Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz.
Yes.
Mr. Rowe.
Yes.
I declare ordinance 17-2016 adopted and finally passed, and I ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with law. Call up ordinance 18-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $125,000 from the Electric Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of submersible underground transformers for the commercial business district.
Mayor, I move ordinance 18-2016.
I second that.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello.
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale.
Yes.
Ms. Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz.
Yes.
Mr. Rowe.
Yes.
I declare ordinance 18-2016 adopted and finally passed, and I ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with law. I call up ordinance 19-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $120,000 from the Electric Capital Improvement Fund for purchase of new security fence at the Kings Road and James Park substations.
Mayor, I move ordinance 19-2016.
I second that.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 19-2016 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice of in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 20-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $30,000 from the Electric Capital Improvement Fund for a replacement of existing outdoor stairway at the Kings Road substation.
Mayor, I move ordinance 20-2016.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 20-2016 adopted and finally passed, and I ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 21-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $20,000 from the Electric Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase and installation of security cameras at the Kings Road and James Park substations.
Mayor, I move ordinance 21-2016.
I second that motion.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 21-2016 adopted and finally passed, and I ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 36-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $35,000 from the Electric Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of automated meters and a handheld meter reading device.
Mayor, I move ordinance 36-2016.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 36-2016 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. And now our next group of ordinances relate to general capital for DPW purposes. This is ordinances 22, 23, and 24, and 26. Ordinance 20, 20, I'm sorry, lose my notes. 22, ordinance 22, $180,000, purchase large truck. Ordinance 23, $70,000 for a 2-ton dump truck. Ordinance 24, $70,000 for a 2-ton dump truck for the sewer department. And ordinance 26 is $30,000 for windows for the mechanic's garage. I open the hearing for those ordinances. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing and open for council discussion. Yes, Ben?
I will vote in favor of ordinance 22-2016 because I was able to find out what a large truck is. But I would just ask in the future that we're a little more precise when we're asking for expenditures on the order of $180,000. Thank you.
Noted that. Any other discussion?
So are you going to tell us what a large truck is?
No,
Okay, thanks.
you
Just,
have to find out for yourself.
So the,
oh, we're supposed to share information.
so for the audience at home and in the room, what is the definition of this large truck in this?
It's a big truck, really. No, it's the vehicles that we use for snow plowing that move and carry very large equipment. They're our largest vehicles in our fleet at DPW.
Thank
The
you.
equivalent of a bucket truck for the electric utility. This is the equivalent vehicle for the DPW.
Any other discussion on these ordinances? All right, I call up ordinance 22, 2016, and ask the clerk to read by title.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $180,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund to purchase a large truck for the Public Works Department.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 22-2016.
I second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 22-2016 adopted and finally passed, and I ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 23-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $70,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund to purchase a 2-ton dump truck for the Public Works Department.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 23-2016.
I second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 23-2016 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 24-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $70,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund to purchase a 2-ton dump truck for the Sewer Department.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 24-2016.
I second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 24-2016 adopted and finally passed, and I ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. And now the next section is our water capital related. This is ordinance 25-27.
I think we're going to do 26.
Mr. Mayor, yeah.
26.
26, Mr. Mayor.
26, yeah. Yeah, actually, I had that, yeah, 20, I did have that on there. I was getting ahead of myself. 24, 26,
That's it.
and
No, we already had the hearing for it.
we're, yeah,
We did
24,
27, 35 is the other one I have in this group.
You didn't mention 35 when you announced.
Yeah.
35 is water.
Yep. So,
You didn't tell people about that, so you're going to have to redo it.
You have to
What?
read that.
You didn't tell people that was the hearing for that one, so we can only do 26.
35 is water.
We didn't lump 35.
so we have, so
still have to do 26.
24 we haven't done.
Yeah, we did
Oh, we
25.
did.
You just did
Sorry, we did
24.
We're doing 26.
Yeah, I'm doing, we're, 25,
It's 25.
We're not doing 25 either. Just 26.
We're doing Jen.
26, and 35.
No.
No, we
Mr.
never-
Mayor, you
I did-
had the hearing for 26. We haven't,
I'm getting my letters, so 25, 27 is this,
No. First, we have to have a motion on 26.
and then a vote.
Public hearing roll call.
I had, okay, I had,
You have to read.
I know.
got it.
Let's go back.
Now I got it. Sorry, I'm a slow. I call up ordinance 26, 2016, and ask the clerk to read that.
There you go.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $30,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund to purchase windows for the mechanic's garage.
And now I move ordinance 26-2016.
I second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
And I declare ordinance 26-2016 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice in every newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance to the law. And now, our next section is water capital, ordinance 25, 27, and 35. So I open the hearing, and 25 is $70,000 for mini excavator. 27, $10,000 for improvement for well upgrades in water department, and 35 is $190,000 for 2016 water improvement program. So I open the hearing for those three ordinances. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing and open for council discussion. Outside of trying to keep me on point. Okay, and we'll now call up ordinance 25 and ask the clerk to read ordinance.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $70,000 from the Water Capital Improvement Fund to purchase a mini excavator with accessories for the Water Department.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 25-2016.
I second the motion.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 25-2016 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 27, 2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $10,000 from the Water Capital Improvement Fund for well upgrades in the Water Department.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 27-2016.
I second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 27-2016 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice of a newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 35-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $190,000 from the Water Capital Improvement Fund for the 2016 Water Improvements Program.
Mr. Mayor, I move
Wait.
Vitale.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mayor, I move ordinance 35-2016.
Second. We want to talk.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare, I've lost my, I declare ordinance 35-2016 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish the notice of a newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance to the law. And now our next group are fire department related ordinances. This is ordinances 27 through 32 and ordinance 37.
We did
28.
28.
28.
28, just checking, see if you're paying attention at home. So 28, $42,000 for general improvement for a fire department vehicle. 29, $15,000 for antenna radio at Midwood Water Tank. 30, $12,000 for multi-gas meters. 31, $12,000 for new set of Jaws of Life. 32, $11,500 for 4 sets of firefighter turnout gear. 37, $8,000 for reusable forcible entry training prop. I open the hearing for those ordinances. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing, and any council discussion.
Ordinance 28-2016. What car are we buying? What fire department vehicle are we buying?
It's the chief's truck.
Fire
It's
chief's
being-
vehicle.
It's a fire chief.
Explorer.
Oh, we're going Ford this year, huh? Big time.
Yeah.
And it's replacing,
The chief's current car.
which is
Probably,
His car is getting,
it's downgraded.
moving down in I forget what year.
2003, wasn't it? Yeah.
2003. How many miles? A lot of miles.
I believe so. I don't remember offhand, but
Parts expensive.
yep. Tougher to maintain.
Parts expensive for a 2003. Okay.
30-year-old car.
It's a Rolls Royce or something? They're expensive parts. They don't make it
Yes.
anymore. It's like the brakes for the Thunderbird. You got to make them yourself.
It's in the capital budget.
Sorry.
Any other discussion? Okay, I call up ordinance 28-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $42,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for purchase of fire department vehicle.
You're moving it now.
Mayor, I move ordinance 28-2016.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 28-2016 adopted and finally passed, and I ask the clerk to publish notice of a newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 29-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $15,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for replacement of the antenna for the fire department radio at the Midwood Water Tank.
Mayor, I move ordinance 29-2016.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 29-2016 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice of a newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 30-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $12,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund to purchase new multi-gas gas meters.
Mayor, I move ordinance 30-2016.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 30-2016 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice of it in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 31-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $12,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of a new set of Jaws of Life rescue tool.
Mayor, I move ordinance 31-2016.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 31-2016 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice of the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 32-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $11,500 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of 4 new sets of firefighter turnout gear.
Mayor, I move ordinance 32-2016.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 32-2016 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice of a newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 37-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $8,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of a reusable forcible entry training prop.
Mayor, I move ordinance 37-2016.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 37-2016 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice of a newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. Okay, our next group are storm sewer and sanitary sewer related, and if I get this right, this is ordinance 32.
33.
33. I keep
33.
33. I know where I keep picking the wrong number. 33. 34 and 39. Powerball number. So, I open the hearing for those. Actually, let me quickly give a summary on those. It is $130,000 for storm sewer improvement program. 34 is $470,000 for the 2016 sanitary sewer improvements program, and 39 is $485,000 for improvements to North Street Pump Station, and it's actually increasing the prior ordinance of 2012 at $485, increasing it to $835. So anyone wishing to comment on any of those 3 ordinances, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing and ask the clerk to read ordinance 33, 2016 by title.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $130,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the 2016 Storm Sewer Improvements Program.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 33-2016.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 33-2016 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice of a newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. And before we call the next one, I did forget to ask any council discussion. If there's any discussion on the other 2 in this group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ordinance 39, please refresh my memory. I believe we've already encumbered $485,000.
Correct.
The incremental spend will be $350,000.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I call up ordinance 34-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $470,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the 2016 Sanitary Sewer Improvements Program.
Mayor, I move ordinance 34-2016.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 34-2016 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice of a newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 39-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Ordinance 18, 2012, appropriating $485,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for improvements to the North Street Pump Station from $485,000 to $835,000.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 39-2016.
I second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalonello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 39-2016 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice of a newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. I call up ordinance 38-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending ordinance 40-2015 appropriating $200,000 from the Open Space Trust Fund for the Bailey Ellard Sports Fields to increase the appropriation from $200,000 to $240,000.
I open the hearing for ordinance 38-2016. Anyone wishing to comment or question, please come forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 38-2016.
I second.
Any council discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Catalonello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 38-2016 adopted and finally passed, and I ask the clerk to publish notice of a newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. Thank you, for everyone, and thank you for your patience on my number confusion. We are now on to, if I got through everything correctly before I move on, we cut them all, right? Okay. We'll move on to our second invitation for discussion from the public. This is when you may comment on any topic. Ask you to please step forward, state your name, your address, write the same on the clipboard, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Anyone wishing to comment? Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting, and we go to introduction of ordinances. Will the clerk please read the statement?
The ordinance scheduled for first reading have a hearing date set for May 23rd, 2016, will be published in the Madison Eagle, posted on the bulletin board, and made available to members of the public requesting copies.
I call up ordinances for first reading and ask the Borough Clerk to read said ordinances by title.
Ordinance 40, 2016, ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $52,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of a police vehicle.
Mayor, I move ordinance 40-2016.
Second?
Any council discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalonello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Call up ordinance 41-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $500,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the reconstruction of Prospect Street.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 41-2016.
I second.
Any further council discussion on this? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalonello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Call up ordinance 42-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 34 of the Borough Code entitled Police Department to revise rules and regulations for the promotion process.
Mayor, I move ordinance 42-2016.
Second?
Council discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalonello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I call up ordinance 43-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 190 of the Madison Borough Code entitled Water to update the water connection fee schedule.
Mayor, I move ordinance 43-2016.
Second.
Any council discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalonello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I call up ordinance 44-2016.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 155 of the Madison Borough Code entitled Sewer to update the sewer connection fee schedule.
I move ordinance 44-2016.
Second.
Any council discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalonello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
We're on to consent agenda resolutions. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Consent agenda resolutions will be enacted with a single motion. Any resolution requiring expenditure is supported by a certification of availability of funds. Any resolution requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda. All resolutions will be reflected in full in the minutes.
Mayor, I move Resolution 153-2016 through Resolution 166-2016.
Any that need to be pulled or? Sorry. Second. Thank you. I'm jumping the gun today. So none that need to be pulled, any discussion? Hey, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Okay, there is no unfinished business. Approval of vouchers. Clerk, please read the voucher.
Okay, that would be public safety, $27,018.69. Health and public assistance, $3,362.53. Public works and engineering, $65,399.13. Community affairs, $32,007.72. Finance and borough clerk, $407,471.36. Utilities, $120,736.76. A total of $655,996.19.
Mr. Mayor, I move the vouchers.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Walkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
And there is no new business.
And with that, I move we adjourn.
Thank you all. I
32.
apologize for my number.
You did fine.
I went against my own notes. I had it all written down.
We'll keep you honest, Bob. Don't worry.
I kept on reading one of those.
We don't want you to get carted away in handcuffs.
Yeah, but I never made it.
I know.